Welcome to Suri Cheating Story, where we share true stories of betrayal in love. Our channel brings heartfelt, real-life experiences from those who have endured the pain of infidelity. Whether you're facing challenges in your own relationship or seeking to better understand the complexities of love and trust, Suri Cheating Story is the place for you. Subscribe now to explore the emotional depths in the path to healing with us. Suri perches on the edge of her porch, the night unfurling around her like a vast, unyielding void, pierced only by a sky blazing with stars that stab at her heart. The air bites with a fierce August chill, her breath curling in ghostly wisps as she yanks her shawl tighter, desperate to fend off the cold, and the soul-crushing emptiness clawing inside her. The village lies still, dogs silenced, windows darkened, a hush so thick it smothers her like a leaden blanket. 40 days ago, Ethan, her rock, her wild-hearted husband, slipped away, his death a brutal thief that stole her world in one merciless blow. She glares at the stars, each one a jagged memory of nights they'd sprawled here together, his easy grin flashing as they hunted shooting stars, her dreams too heavy to chase his swift wishes. She'd hungered for a child, a living piece of their love, but fate mocked her with a barren womb, a decade of shattered hopes piling up like ash after endless doctor visits. Now, alone, the solitude slams into her, a tidal wave of grief she can't outrun. Her chest heaves as she recalls Ethan's final night, his stubborn refusal to rest, hunched over papers in the dim living room glow, promising just a little longer. She'd sighed, kissed his brow, and left him there, never imagining dawn would greet her with his lifeless body sprawled on the floor. The shock had ripped her apart, her screams shredding the morning as neighbors stormed in, their pitying eyes blurring into a haze. The coroner's words still echo, a heart worn thin, too frail for a man so young, a silent killer he'd ignored in his relentless grind. Suri clutches her knees, rage flaring hot. She should have fought harder, dragged him from his work, seen the fragility he hid beneath his boundless energy. She loved him with a fire that consumed her, and he'd matched it, but now she's a husk, hollowed out by a loss that gnaws without mercy. Still, amid this wreckage, a fierce spark flares in her gut. She won't let despair claim her, won't let Ethan's absence snuff out her fight. His spirit haunts this place, the farm he carved from nothing, the fields he tamed with sweat and grit. She can still hear his booming laugh bouncing off the barn walls, feel his calloused fingers threading through hers as they plan their future. Suri grits her teeth, nails biting into her palms, swearing to claw her way back to life. She'll rise with the sun, its glare a challenge she'll meet head-on. Tomorrow she'll storm the library, pass her old duties to Clara, and dive into the farm's rugged chaos. Work will be her lifeline, a brutal shield against the gaping wound Ethan left. She hurls his name into the night, a raw, trembling vow to endure, to keep his flame burning even as her own flickers in the dark. Suri charges into the dawn with a vengeance, the sun erupting over the horizon like a furious god, hurling molten gold across the fields in a blaze that singes her raw, sleepless eyes. She's no farmer, never claimed to be, but today she'll wrestle that title from the jaws of fate itself. Ethan's farm towers before her, a ferocious sprawl of defiant earth and restless life. A kingdom he'd clawed from the wilderness, with bloodied hands and a heart too big to tame. It's her last shred of him, a pulsating monument to his unyielding soul, and she'll shred herself to ribbons before letting it crumble. Years back, they'd bolted from the city's choking wreckage, Ethan's auto shop drowning in a merciless flood of debt, and flung themselves into this untamed gamble. He'd transform ruin into glory, bending the land to his will with a cocky grin and a fire that nothing could quench, until his heart snapped like a brittle twig. Now it's Suri's war to wage, and the burden smashes into her like a sledgehammer, daring her to break. She thunders toward the barn, boots slamming the cracked earth, dust exploding around her like a battle cry. Inside, Ethan's ghost ambushes her. His tools gleam with stubborn pride on the rack. His worn jacket slumps over a stool, reeking of his fierce, earthy scent. She snatches it up, crushes it to her face, and chokes on a ragged sob as his essence, leather, sweat, in grit, slams her back to nights of reckless hope, plotting their empire under star-streaked skies. He'd forged this sanctuary to save them, a roaring defiance against a world that had chewed him up, and she'll be damned if it fades to dust. Suri hurls the jacket aside, her resolve blazing, and storms into his shed-turned office, a cramped fortress of his dreams. Papers avalanche across the desk, scrawled with his bold, chaotic strokes. Crop rotations, livestock tallies, a combine he'd chased like a madman's grail. She dives into the wreckage, fingers quaking, eyes stinging as she wrestles with his cryptic legacy. Numbers taunt her, terms like nitrogen levels and drip lines snarl like foreign beasts, but she bites down hard and battles on, refusing to let ignorance win. The fields roar next, a merciless titan she can't dodge. She charges out, the sun a blazing tyrant scorching her flesh, sweat pouring like a river as she confronts the beast Ethan once ruled. Workers swarm the land, plowing with brutal force, sowing with relentless rhythm, hauling loads that would crush lesser souls under Jacob's iron fist. He's a weathered colossus, face carved from stone, eyes glinting like daggers, voice a thunderclap that could split the sky. Ethan's rock, Jacob sizes her up as she staggers forward, her stomach a knot of dread. She's no general, just a widow with a death wish. "You're a damn rookie," he snarls, but a spark of gruff warmth flickers in his gaze. He hurls her into the chaos, barking commands she scrambles to catch. Check the wheat's height, count the seed bags, fix the leaking pump. She flounders, firing off clumsy questions. How deep's the tillage? What's a silt trap? And Jacob growls back, his patience a lifeline she grips with bleeding hands, pulling herself from the abyss. Her body shrieks as the day grinds her down, muscles howling in agony, palms splitting open as she heaves grain sacks and wrestles muddy hoses that lash like serpents. The crew stares, their eyes cold and judging, some city chick daring to claim Ethan's throne. But she locks onto them, her glare a molten dare. Test me and burn. Ethan's voice rages in her skull. We don't bend, Suri. We conquer. By dusk, she's a shattered mess, coated in filth, bruised to the bone, legs wobbling like a newborn colt. But a savage triumph ignites her veins. She's forced the farm to kneel, just for a moment. Jacob slams a hand on her shoulder, his gravelly growl cutting the twilight. Ethan's cheering, girl. Damn fine start. The words rip through her, a jagged blade of pride and pain, stoking the inferno in her chest. She collapses on the porch, the stars glaring down like pitiless kings, and hurls a vow into the void. I'm not letting go, Ethan. This is ours. The night swallows her words, but a feral strength surges within, a roaring, unquenchable fire that dares the world to try and snuff it out. Suri staggers into the new day, the dawn clawing through the sky with a savage red glow, casting long, brutal shadows over the farm she's sworn to save. Her bones ache, her hands throb with fresh blisters, but she hauls herself upright, fueled by a stubborn fire that Ethan's death couldn't extinguish. She's a stranger in this world of dirt and grit, a city girl thrust into a battle she's barely equipped to fight. Yet she's not alone. The village surges around her like a tidal wave of raw, unpolished humanity. Rough-hewn souls who refuse to let her drown. They'd loved Ethan, revered him as the man who'd breathed life into their dying hamlet. And now they rally for her, their loyalty a fierce, unspoken pact that slams into her chest like a war drum. She's not just a widow clinging to a ghost. She's their last stand against oblivion, and they'll be damned if they let her fall. Jacob looms first, a towering sentinel forged from decades of sun and toil, his presence a bedrock she can't ignore. He storms into her mornings with a gruff roar, dragging her back to the fields she's still learning to command. Get up, Suri. Crops don't wait for tears, he barks, his voice a thunderclap that jolts her from despair. He's relentless, shoving her into the chaos of harvest plans and livestock counts, his calloused hands steadying her when she stumbles. She fumbles with tools, curses at broken fences, and he's there, growling corrections, tossing her a wrench, teaching her the brutal rhythm of this life. His faith in her isn't soft or coddling, It's a jagged, unyielding thing, forged in the same fire that Ethan once wielded. "You've got his guts," he mutters one dusk, his eyes glinting like steel under the fading sun. And the words sear into her, a lifeline she clutches with trembling, bloodied fists. Then there's Clara, the iron-willed librarian who storms into Suri's world like a hurricane wrapped in a gray shawl. She's a force, sharp-tongued, unapologetic, her gaze slicing through bullshit like a blade. Suri hands over her library keys, expecting a curt nod, but Clara lingers, her presence crackling with an intensity that unnerves her. Over steaming mugs of tea in Suri's cozy kitchen, Clara unravels her own scars. A husband snatched by death, a child lost to a cruel miscarriage, a life rebuilt from ashes. Her voice cuts deep, raw with wisdom. "You don't heal by hiding, girl. You bleed, you break, then you rise." She doesn't coddle Suri. She shoves her toward the light, demanding she fight. Their talks stretch into the night, Clara's gruff kindness peeling back Suri's layers, exposing the strength she'd buried under grief. "Ethan's gone, but you're still here. Make it count," Clara snaps, and Suri feels the words ignite a spark she thought was dead. The village itself roars to life around her, a gritty chorus of support she never saw coming. Neighbors, hardened farmers, weathered widows, slam their fists on her door, hauling in casseroles, tools, advice she didn't ask for but desperately needs. Old Man Tucker, with his leathery hands and gravel voice, thrusts a sack of seed at her. "For Ethan's fields, don't waste it." Widow May, her eyes sunken but fierce, drags Suri to the co-op, barking at her to haggle for feed like a pro. They don't pity her, they challenge her. Their rough love, a battering ram that smashes through her isolation. At the market, grizzled men tip their hats, muttering, "He'd be proud, Suri," and the women press jars of jam into her hands, their nods sharp with respect. It's not charity, it's a pact, a shared vow to keep Ethan's dream alive through her, and it fuels her battered soul with a wild, unshakable resolve. Night crashes down, the stars a blazing jury overhead, and Suri sinks onto her porch, her body screaming from the day's brutal toll. She's filthy, exhausted, her hands raw and trembling, but she's not the hollow shell she was weeks ago. Jacob's lessons, Clara's fire, the village's fierce grip, they've hammered her into something new, something unbreakable. She's still green, still stumbling, but she's rising, fueled by a community that refuses to let her fade. She tilts her head back, the cold biting her cheeks, and whispers to Ethan's ghost, "They've got me. Love, I'm not alone." The wind howls back, carrying their voices, their strength, and she feels it sink into her marrow, a roaring tide lifting her from the wreckage. Tomorrow she'll charge back into the fray, battered but bolstered, ready to fight not just for herself, but for them all. Suri trudges through the twilight, the sky bleeding crimson as the sun plunges behind the fields, casting a haunting glow over the farm she's battled to preserve. Her body groans, muscles knotted, hands scarred from weeks of relentless toil, but her spirit flickers with a fragile, defiant pride. She's kept Ethan's legacy alive, propped up by Jacob's iron will and Clara's fierce wisdom, the village's rough embrace shielding her from collapse. Yet tonight, exhaustion isn't her only burden. A restless ache gnaws at her, urging her to face the ghost she's dodged too long. She storms into the house, the silence slamming into her like a fist, and her gaze locks on the shed, Ethan's sacred hideout, locked tight since his death. She'd avoided it, terrified of the memories it held. But now it beckons, a siren's call she can't ignore. Grabbing the key, she charges out, her heart pounding like a war drum, ready to rip open the past. The shed door groans as she shoves it wide, the air thick with dust and Ethan's lingering scent. Wood shavings, ink, and a faint whiff of tobacco. She flicks on the light, her breath catching as the space unveils itself. A rugged shrine to his dreams. Shelves sag under gardening books, their spines cracked from his restless hands. A battered chair sits by a stove, his refuge from the world. Suri's chest tightens, her fingers trembling as she brushes the desk, papers fluttering like wounded birds. She's here to pack away his things, to bury the pain, but fate sneers at her plans. A notebook slips from the stack, thudding to the floor, and she snatches it up, her eyes narrowing at its unmarked cover. Curiosity claws at her, sharp and unyielding. She flips it open, and Ethan's bold scrawl explodes across the page, a voice from the grave that stops her cold. "I never wanted Suri to know," he begins, the words slashing through her like a blade, raw and unfiltered. She staggers back, clutching the desk, as his confession unfurls, a brutal, jagged tale she never saw coming. Ethan spills his soul, a childhood love, Lila, a fiery beauty who'd owned him heart and soul. They'd burned bright in their youth, a reckless blaze of first kisses and whispered vows, until she torched his world, dumping him for a slick, rich boy named Trent. Suri's stomach churns as Ethan's pain bleeds through the ink. His humiliation, his drunken spiral, his vow to lock his heart away. She'd met him years later, a guarded man who'd stumbled into her life, and she'd thought she'd cracked his armor. But now the truth claws her apart. He'd loved Lila first, a ghost she could never banish, and their marriage, her sanctuary, had been born from spite, a rash proposal flung in Lila's smug face. Her knees buckle, the diary slipping as tears scald her cheeks, but she snatches it back, devouring the rest with a masochistic fury. Ethan's words twist the knife deeper. He'd run into Lila again. 2 years ago, her life a wreck. Divorced, broke, a shadow of the goddess he'd worshipped. She'd wept in his car, and he'd faltered, tumbling into a cheap hotel room in a haze of weakness and regret. Suri chokes on a sob, the betrayal slamming into her like a freight train. Ethan, her Ethan, tangled with another woman while she slept alone, trusting and clueless. He writes of his shame, his frantic escape from Lila's arms, his desperate love for Suri drowning out the mistake. But the dagger sinks deepest with his final blow. Lila bore a child, a boy named Caleb, and claimed it was his. Ethan wrestled with doubt, paid for the kid's care in secret, his guilt a noose he couldn't shake. The diary ends abruptly. "My heart's killing me, but Caleb's might too." And Suri collapses, the book thudding to the floor, her world shattered anew. She screams into the shed silence, fists pounding the desk, rage and grief colliding in a tempest that threatens to rip her apart. Ethan, her rock, her soulmate, had harbored this festering lie, a wound he'd nursed alone while she adored him blindly. The farm, their home, every tender moment now reeks of deceit, and she hates him, hates his weakness, his silence, his betrayal. Yet beneath the fury, a wrenching pity stirs. He'd suffered too, torn between loyalty and shame, his love for her a beacon he couldn't snuff out. Suri clutches the diary, her tears soaking the pages, and whispers his name. A broken, anguished plea. The stars outside glare through the window, cold and merciless, as she wrestles with the wreckage of her trust, a woman unmoored, teetering on the edge of a new, uncharted abyss. Suri slumps in the shed, the diary sprawled like a taunting specter on the floor, its pages bleeding Ethan's secrets into the stifling air. The night presses against the windows, a suffocating shroud of stars that mock her with their indifferent gleam. Her chest heaves, lungs burning as if she's drowning in the wreckage of her shattered trust. Ethan, her anchor, her everything, had plunged a dagger into her back with his filthy affair. She snatches the notebook again, her fingers trembling with a volatile mix of rage and despair, rereading his words as though they might morph into a lie she can stomach. Lila's name sears her eyes, a venomous ghost clawing from the past, and Caleb, the boy Ethan dared to sire, twists the blade deeper. She hurls the diary across the room, its thud echoing like a gunshot, and buries her face in her hands, a guttural sob ripping free. The man she'd worshipped, whose every laugh and touch she'd cherished, had been a fraud, and the betrayal gnaws at her soul like a ravenous beast. She staggers to her feet, pacing the shed like a caged animal, her mind a chaotic storm of fury and heartbreak. Ethan's face flashes, his warm grin, his steady hands, and she wants to scream, to claw it from her memory. How could he? How could he cradle her at night, whisper love into her ear, while hiding this festering wound? She'd given him everything, her dreams, her barren years, her unwavering faith. and he'd repaid her with a cheap hotel fling and a bastard child. Rage surges, hot and blinding. She slams her fist into the wall, the pain jolting through her knuckles, a fleeting relief from the inferno inside. She hates him, hates his weakness, his cowardice, the way he'd locked this filth away instead of facing her with the truth. Her love feels like a fool's crown now, tarnished and heavy, and she wants to torch every tender moment they'd shared. Let it burn to ash in the fire of his deceit. Yet, as the rage crests, a treacherous ache slithers beneath it, insidious and unbidden. She collapses into Ethan's chair, the leather creaking under her weight, and stares at the scattered pages, his jagged handwriting a lifeline to the man she lost. His words bleed remorse. He despised himself, loathed the slip with Lila, called it a mistake that haunted him. Suri's my world, he'd scrawled, the ink smudged as if he'd wept over it, and the confession pierces her, a bittersweet arrow she can't dodge. He'd loved her, fiercely, desperately, enough to bury this sin, to shield her from its ugliness. She clutches her chest, tears scalding her cheeks, torn between the Ethan who'd betrayed her and the Ethan who'd bled for her in silence. He'd been a fool, a broken man wrestling demons she'd never seen, and damn it, she pities him, pities the weight he carried alone, the guilt that likely snapped his fragile heart. Her mind churns, a relentless whirlwind of what-ifs and whys. Could she have saved him, dragged the truth from him, shared his burden? She'd missed the signs, the late nights, the locked shed, blinded by her trust while he crumbled under his shame. Suri groans, raking her hands through her hair, grappling with the wreckage of their bond. She wants to hate him clean and pure, to cast him as the villain and walk away, but love clings like a stubborn vine, twisting through her fury. He'd been her rock, her partner in this wild rural dream, and even now his absence carves a hollow she can't fill. She snatches the diary again, tracing his words with trembling fingers, and a ragged whisper escapes. "Why didn't you tell me, Ethan? I'd have fought with you." The shed swallows her plea, the silence a cruel judge, and she feels the fracture in her soul widen, anger and forgiveness locked in a brutal dance. Dawn creeps through the cracks, a faint, merciless light that bathes the shed in gray. Suri sits numb and ravaged, the diary cradled in her lap like a relic of a war she didn't sign up for. She's a storm-tossed ship, unmoored by Ethan's betrayal, yet a strange clarity pierces the chaos. He'd faltered, fallen, but he'd loved her through it, enough to hide Caleb, to spare her this pain. She doesn't absolve him. The wound festers, too deep for that. But she can't unlove him either, can't erase the decade of laughter and sweat they'd poured into this life. She rises, legs shaky, and steps into the cold morning, the farm sprawling before her, a testament to their shared fight. "You broke me, Ethan," she mutters, her voice a jagged vow, "but I'm still standing." The stars fade, and she braces herself, teetering on the edge of a choice that will redefine her forever. Suri stands over Caleb's crib, the orphanage's dim light casting harsh shadows across his fragile frame. His shallow breaths a desperate drumbeat in her ears. Her heart thunders, a wild storm of resolve and terror. She's claimed him, this boy born of Ethan's betrayal, and now she'll wage war to save him. Elise, the director, hovers nearby, her voice cutting through the haze. His heart's a ticking bomb. Surgery's his only shot, but it's a fortune. Suri's gut twists, the weight of those words crashing down like a landslide. She's got no money, no plan, just a blazing vow to drag Caleb from death's jaws. She storms out, her boots pounding the cracked linoleum, and barrels back to her truck, the engine snarling to life as she tears toward the village. Her mind churns, a relentless torrent. Ethan's farm is thriving, but not enough to bankroll a miracle. She'll burn the world down if she has to. This boy won't die on her watch. She slams into the farm, dust exploding around her as she leaps from the truck, her eyes blazing with a manic fire. Jacob's there, forearms crossed, his grizzled face hardening as she spills the truth. Ethan's secret son, dying, a surgery that could bankrupt them. "You're crazy, girl," he growls, but his voice cracks, a flicker of awe piercing his gruff shell. Suri doesn't flinch. She grabs his arm, her grip iron. Help me save him, Jacob. He's all I've got left to fight for. He stares, then nods, a slow, resolute dip of his chin, and the gears grind into motion. They raid the office, tearing through Ethan's files, bank statements, harvest projections, searching for a lifeline. The numbers mock her, pitiful against the staggering cost. But Suri's resolve roars louder. She'll sell the farm if it comes to it, torch every acre for Caleb's heartbeat. But Jacob slams a fist on the desk. We'll find another way. Ethan's soul's in this dirt. Clara bursts in next, summoned by Jacob's gruff call, her sharp eyes narrowing as Suri unloads the saga. Ethan's diary, Caleb's frail life. You're a damn fool, Clara snaps, but her tone softens, a rare warmth bleeding through. She drags Suri to the kitchen, shoving tea into her hands, and unearths a wild card. A battered jewelry box, stuffed with her grandmother's hidden loot. Gold chains, emerald studs, relics of a merchant's escape decades ago. It's cursed, they said, Clara mutters, her voice a jagged whisper. But I'd rather it save a kid than rot in my attic. Suri's breath catches, her fingers tracing the glinting treasure, a fortune shimmering in her grasp. She lunges at the idea, her pulse racing. It's a lifeline, a brutal gamble she'll seize with both hands. Clara nods, fierce and unyielding. Sell it, girl. Get him that surgery. Suri charges into the city again, the jewelry box rattling beside her, her truck a roaring beast eating up the miles. She hunts down a jeweler, a sly fox named Marcus, his eyes glinting as he weighs the haul. Priceless, rare, enough to cover Caleb's operation, and then some. Where'd you snag this? He probes, but Suri shuts him down, her voice a steel blade. Doesn't matter. Name your price and move fast. He smirks, sensing her desperation, but she locks eyes, daring him to haggle with her resolve. The deal's struck. Cash floods in, a torrent of hope she clutches like a lifeline, and she races back to Mercy Haven, slamming the funds into Elise's hands. Do it, she commands, her voice a thunderclap. Save him now. Elise nods, stunned, and the wheels spin. Doctors scramble, plans ignite, and Suri collapses against the wall, her chest heaving with a feral mix of triumph and dread. She's emptied herself, her pride, her past, her future, into this fight, and the stakes claw at her soul. Caleb's not just Ethan's ghost. He's her redemption, her roaring claim to a motherhood fate denied her. She'll bleed for him, break for him, and as the surgery looms, she whispers into the sterile air, Hold on, little man, I'm here. The village's fierce faith, Clara's wild gift, her own unyielding will, they've forged a miracle, and she'll see it through no matter the cost. Part 1 ends here, but the story has not stopped yet. The next developments will have many surprises, surging emotions that you cannot miss. In which direction will fate push the story? What awaits ahead? Stay tuned for the next episode so you don't miss the most important details. Thank you for watching. See you in the next part.